Every night, without fail, Daniel would sit in the same place on the edge of his narrow bed, in a dimly lit room that felt colder than it should have been. The walls were bare, the silence was heavy, and yet he spoke not to a friend, not to a family member, but to the silence. At first, it felt strange, even foolish. But when you've lost everything, even silence begins to feel like someone who might listen. Daniel hadn't always lived this way. The time when his life was full of plan, few his name. He had a steady job, a home that felt warm, and dreams that stretched far beyond the horizon. But life has a way of changing things. Slowly at first, and then all at once, one mistake led to another. One loss opened the door to more losses. His job slipped away. His relationships crumbled, and somewhere along the way, Daniel lost himself. Now, all that remained was a quiet room and a heart full of questions. Each night, he would sit there, staring into nothing, and begin to speak. "God," he would say softly, almost unsure if he believed the word anymore. "Are you there?" There was never an answer. At least, not the kind he expected. No voice echoed back. No sudden miracle changed his situation. No sign appeared to reassure him. Just silence. And yet, he kept coming back. Night after night. Some nights, his voice trembled with pain. "I don't understand. Why did this happen to me? Where did I go wrong? Why do I feel so alone?" Other nights, he barely had the strength to speak at all, but still, he showed up. Because deep down, even when doubt whispered the loudest, hope refused to completely disappear. Days turned into weeks. Weeks began to feel like months. Nothing around him seemed to change. The same empty room! The same quiet nights. The same unanswered prayers. It would have been easy to stop, to give up, to believe that no one was listening. But something inside Daniel wouldn't let him walk away. So he continued, speaking, waiting, hoping. Then one morning, something different happened. It wasn't dramatic. There was no thunder, no blinding light, no voice calling his name. Just a simple morning like any other. The sun slowly rose, and for the first time in a long while, its light slipped through Daniel's window. Daniel sat there, as he always did, quiet, still, but this time, something shifted. Not around him, within him. A feeling began to rise, not loudly, not suddenly but softly. Like a whisper in the depths of his soul, it was peace. A deep, unexplainable calm that wrapped around his heart. For a moment, he didn't understand it. Nothing in it still didn't his job back. His relationships were still broken. His future was still uncertain. And yet, the weight he had been carrying for so long began to lift. Tears filled his eyes, but this time they weren't only from pain. They were from something else. Relief, stillness, hope. Daniel looked around the same small room, but it no longer felt as empty. Because for the first time, he realized something powerful. He had never truly been alone. The silence he had been speaking to all those nights had not been empty after all. It had been listening. And now, instead of answering with words, it answered with peace. From that day on, Daniel's life didn't magically transform overnight. He didn't suddenly gain wealth. He didn't instantly fix everything he had lost. But something far more important changed. It did. He began to wake up with a different mindset. Instead of focusing on what was gone, he started appreciating what remained. Instead of asking why me, he began asking, what now? He started small, a kind word to a stranger, a helping hand to someone in need, a smile, even when it felt difficult. And slowly, those small actions began to reshape his world. People noticed. Opportunities began to appear. Connections started to rebuild. not because everything became perfect, but because Daniel was no longer the same man who sat broken in silence. He had found something stronger than answers. He had found peace. And that peace gave him the strength to keep going, even when life remained uncertain. Years later, when someone asked him what changed everything, Daniel didn't talk about a miracle or a voice from heaven. He simply told God to speak and started listening to the peace he had already given me. Because sometimes the answer isn't a sound. It isn't a sign you can see or touch. Sometimes the answer is a quiet calm in the middle of your storm, a strength that didn't have before, a peace that doesn't make sense, but somehow holds you together, and in that peace, you find everything you were searching for. Message: sometimes God doesn't answer with words, but with peace that changes everything.